stacks on her mind, grinding all day, hustle refined, shattering ceilings, she steers and obtain. Boss is a title, wealth is a game.
I can literally see this woman's face in my head right now. Yes. She was like such a happy little lady. I don't know whatever happened to her, right? I know. I see all my favorite DJs from like back in that day. But again, we could dance back in the 80s like nobody was watching. Because literally nobody was. I feel sorry for the generation now that can't dance like nobody's watching. Hello, and welcome to the Hiring Women podcast, a show that is dedicated to making financial conversations about money and business and life accessible. Again, so that hiring women can make confident decisions and live life on their own terms. So if you've been like riding with us for a while, you might know I love connecting music with the conversation. Remember this one? Because we all kind of know where we were in the 80s dancing to the song Rise Up by the Parachute Club. I honestly, when I was thinking about this episode, I just thought about the lyrics of this song and how much it just talks about women rising up and just showing the power when they rise up. And I think we're definitely in a time where really more than ever, women are doing just that. They're rising up. And for me, what's really exciting about that is when it comes to how much power women wield in the world right this minute. Like we've never wielded this kind of power before. And it can be tied to the rise in women's wealth over the last 20 years. Like, let's not forget about that, right? Women are being more educated, taking up space in boardrooms, and their wealth is showing up in that way. They're senior positions. I deal with a lot of lawyers, and I see it, like even with my work with lawyers, more female lawyers are actually graduating from law school more than ever before, more than their male counterparts, right? And some other fun facts I wanted to share with you is actually, according to some recent data from CNBC, the amount of wealth controlled by women grew by 52%. And because we live longer than men, we'll actually inherit trillions. Did you hear me? The capital T, trillions over the next 5 to 30 years due to the great wealth transfer. So I think that's really exciting too. And this kind of dough, we will be controlling this kind of dough is nothing to sneeze at. It's a large amount of dough, but I'm really contemplating whether or not we are ready to take over that kind of dough. Do we actually know what we want to do with this wealth? Because ladies, end of the day, we've worked hard and we can see in this world we live in right now, there's seismic social shifts happening all around us. And if we know we're going to be controlling so much money, like trillions, we are not going to be able to spend it all. So what do we want to have done with that money? What do we want to do with the money that we leave behind that we don't spend? What kind of world do we want to leave behind for our children with this kind of money that we're going to leave behind? I am your host, Jackie Porter. And as I said, love connecting the theme of our conversation today with music. So again, that was Rise Up by Parachute Club. Again, ladies, we are going to dive into a conversation today that's been coming up more and more with the women I work with. And it's all around that wealth and impact. Like we're going to build all this success. We are building all of this success. And we actually stand to inherit even more, right? But how do we actually turn that success into meaningful impact?
That's what I want you to be asking yourself. But I actually am going to be joined by someone extraordinary, Dr. Lisa Trefzeger. I've probably ruined your name. Trefzeger. Please forgive me for ruining your name, Lisa Clark. Lisa is an educator. She's a scholar, a social justice advocate, and also an inaugural postdoctoral researcher. And she's leading Carleton University's Women in Philanthropy initiative. Lisa's work explores how women build, use, and influence wealth, and more specifically, how women's stories and identities shape the way that they give, that they lead, and how they leave their legacy. So she is the right person for the conversation we're going to have today. It's a deeply personal conversation. It's a deeply practical conversation and a deeply powerful conversation as well, especially if you're a high-earning woman who's asking yourself the very question I raised, which is, what's next? How can my family actually create change with the wealth that they've built? So, Lisa, thank you for allowing me to destroy your name on my podcast. Welcome to the show. And what did you think of the song? You clearly remember it.
I clearly remember it, and I can think of where I was in Ajax, Ontario, Durham region, with my jelly bracelets and my jelly shoes and my headband, dancing around with my cousins, probably a purple jumpsuit, you know.
I know, I hear you. I remember it well.
And
I
it
had
does
one of those.
remind
Me too. I had one of the neon green.
Yeah, lots of neon. And it also reminds me, and I think what really, when we're talking about philanthropy, we need to remind ourselves of the voices of people like Maya Angelou and the Rise Up. You know, that is also a moment of rising that can connect to philanthropy, which is, you know, really, really bring it back to the strength of movements of women and women's voices.
Absolutely. And I think it's crucial that we think about past legacies and the legacy that we want to create, because we can continue to just blaze this trail, right, for what we want the future to look like, and the children that we leave behind's future to look like. I heard a really amazing quote, which is, we can be the person that creates the world we never live to see. And I love that quote.
Absolutely.
Isn't that amazing, right? And I want to get into some of those things with you. But before I do, I want to actually start with you. I want to start with, before we get into the whole philanthropy, wealth, legacy, this world that we may not live to see, let's start a little bit with you. I'd love to hear about your very layered personal story. You're somebody who's German, Jewish heritage, immigrant family roots, which I totally get into, a queer identity, and a powerful connection to disability and social justice advocacy. And I'd love to know how all of that shaped your worldview and the work that you do.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's rooted in this last name that I have.
Yes, please help me say it. So sad.
It took me a long time to claim this name back. Clark was my former married name, and it was really, really easy to walk around, you know, in this space with Clark as a last name, but Trefzeger, you have to say every single letter. So Trefzeger is actually a name that can be traced back to a tiny little town in Bavaria. There's a Wikipedia for it, and it goes all the way back to the 1300s. And the root of it is tref, which means resilient root or resilient weed. And I think that really...
You've got to be kidding me.
This is my personality. And it traces to how my family got here post World War II. My father was a child and a German immigrant. My mother was a German Jewish refugee. They both came over after World War II. Their families looking to have a safer and better life in post-war Germany. My great-grandmother was a survivor of Ravensbrück concentration camp. And I think that the family stories around the table, both my grandfathers as some of the cannon fodder, the child soldiers that were brought in, really helped me to understand um, what the legacy of genocide is for peoples, ancestral roots and how important they are in countries of origin, and what the dream of coming to Canada could be, and whose land is it? So I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, which is Williams Treaties and Treaty 20 area called Nogojiwanon, the place at the end of the rapids, or Peterborough, Ontario.
Oh, really? I did not know that. You're schooling me right now, girl.
Yeah, and so I'm here in my family home. I've got my wife, who is also a professor. And then I have two boys. So I do a lot of work in thinking about the roles of women in supporting women, violence against women work, and of course the 2S LGBTQIA community and disability justice. But also I have two boys.
That's what I was thinking.
A 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, and so I have to think a lot about our roles and who we are and how we pass on knowledge towards those next generations so they can survive. I do a lot of that work in my scholarly and personal life.
Yeah, I was going to say in your home and at school.
And at school.
I feel like you learned it probably twice, right? You learned it twice as much.
Yes.
And so you definitely can teach because you're learning it in real time, twice as much.
In real time. And so I do teach, and then I do this research. I was in the charitable nonprofit sector for over 20 years. I had worked my way up to an executive director during COVID-19 at a sexual assault center. And that was some of the most difficult work I've ever done. And I had a lot of questions coming out of that, which led me to my work in academia, and then this incredible project that I have the privilege to be a part of.
Well, let's get into that. I really appreciate you sharing such a nuanced story like that. That to me, like your life is a testament to such an amazing legacy right there. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about actually a few parts of this. Just actually break down, why legacy is so important. And the first one is, let's talk about where we came from, like where we're starting from, which is the rise of women wealth holders. And one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you is that we're really living through this massive shift, societal shifts, what are women's roles, and, what kind of society, like what's important, what are women's values, what are the values of the society we're living in now. And in the backdrop of that, and some of the rights that women have are literally in certain parts of the world, I'll just say world, are being taken away in real time.
Yes.
And that's against the backdrop of women earning more, and they're building wealth faster and inheriting wealth on a scale we've never seen before. So these things are all happening simultaneously. And the other thing that kills me about all of this is research still tends to ignore women, as research does, especially diverse women, when it comes to philanthropy and wealth leadership. So what are you learning about Canadian women and how they give?
Right. Well, first of all, I'll start with, we're around the 50th anniversary of women actually being able to have their own credit cards.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and property rights weren't available to all women, Indigenous women being the last to receive property rights in the 1960s. So it is not that long that we have had the opportunity to inherit and to hold wealth without a signature by a male relative or spouse.
So hang on, let that sink in, confidant, high earning community. It's only been 50 years, and even less for Indigenous women to actually hold a credit card or even inherit wealth. That might explain a lot, right?
Yeah. But women are amazing. And there's this incredible book called The Uprising of Women in Philanthropy. I highly recommend it. Not much Canadian content, which is why we're doing this project. But in fact, 50% of women's movements around the world, all of which are nonviolent, result in social policy change. And so as we rise up, we make change for our children, change for our families, change for our communities and our rights. And so you talked about the 1 trillion being inherited over the next few years,
Yeah.
not so long.
5 to 30.
Yeah,
to be exact.
5 to 30. And, that gives us an opportunity that we have never had before to make decisions with impact, where we invest, how we shape our communities and support our communities, and how we support each other.
I actually think that the opportunity is there for the taking, and the opportunity exists for us, and not do what women tend to do, which we tend to kind of deflect, and we tend to acquiesce our power. So there is definitely a lot of opportunity there. So tell me, now that we know that social change is something that women have always been at the forefront of, what are we doing now? What are you seeing happening right now in terms of how Canadian women, particularly, generally how the world is giving, and how Canadian women particularly are giving right now, and what the trends are? I'd love to know about that.
Absolutely. So, our most recent data is 2023. And what I would say about that is, in terms of taxations, we can see that in charitable giving, 49% is women in their tax receiving, and that contributes to about $4.6 billion just in 2023 alone, which is incredible. $4.6 billion.
Wow.
But I'd say 2/3 of women, 65% of women, focus their generosity on 4 or fewer charities. And I resonate with that. I am focused and I am strategic in my giving, and it matches my values. So women are particularly interested in social impact. That seems to be across the data so far. And women as entrepreneurs, they align their businesses with their philanthropic goals. So they're making impact through their businesses as well.
So what was the first point? Sorry, I don't know if I heard it fully.
Oh, yeah.
I heard you talk about how entrepreneurs are aligning their business values with their social values, and could be social justice or favorite charities they care about. What was the first point that you made?
Oh, that women are really interested in social impact as an outcome of their giving. They're not so interested. We've heard this, and this is part of the sort of what we want to talk about in the research. Is it's not so much about getting your name on a building. It's about seeing social change, seeing, positive outcomes in communities, seeing, post-traumatic growth in communities, seeing everyone thrive in the groups that we are interested in. We don't all agree on what we want to give to, and they are very tied. Our giving is very tied to our beliefs and our values, and we have different cultural, and faith-based, ideas, and our giving follows along those pathways, but we all are interested in social change.
Yeah, and I think that tracks, right? Because as you said, women all around the world, they lead these social movements, even without, the finances, they're doing that. So of course, with money, women, they always say, if you give women money, even in the poorest of communities, everybody rises as she rises, right? So it's just amazing to hear that that the research tracks that as well. And I think so many of our listeners who might be who are hiring women who might not know what to do with their money after they spend and live on their, have a lifestyle. I know that so many of them will relate to the tension between, earning a good income and still wanting to make an impact, but not really sure how to do that, right? So let me ask you, what are some of the mindset shifts? So we know that women are giving; they're giving to the social causes they care about. It might be 3 or 4 charities. But if you're not sure where to start and you're having some mental blocks around that, what are the biggest mindset shifts high earning women need to do to order really to just move from earning to making these impactful, sort of intentional and giving and influence type moves?
I think one of them is knowing where your money is invested. So, one of the shifts alone is ensuring that how we invest our money aligns with our values and our beliefs. Early on, I remember getting an RESP for my children, and I said, well, I want ethical funds. And that
Right.
was pretty new 20 years ago.
I remember that.
That was a pretty new conversation to have with a wealth advisor. But in fact, my funds grew really well. I was really, really satisfied with that over time, and really proud of that growth and how I was able to provide education for these growing boys. And so that has become more and more important. Not every wealth advisor is
it's so funny you
seasoned.
mentioned that.
Yeah, they're not all are seasoned in ethical funds. More and more are. Not are all seasoned in a philanthropic plan as part of your giving. And there are philanthropy consultants and, estate advisors and all sorts of people that can help us. But they've got to fit with our values and our belief systems and encourage us to invest in our money in ways that feel good for us, for growth, personal and familial growth, and for community growth when we're interested in that.
You know what? You make a very important point, because 20 years ago, like you said, I remember presenting these investment plans to women, and they were the first people to ask me about what's in my mutual fund. What am I buying? Like, what exactly do these companies do? Are there arms dealers in there? Are there child laborers in there? They were the first group of people to say, I want to know exactly where my money is being used, and I want to make sure it's not causing harm to people or to the environment. And so they were having these types of social justice conversations about how the money they're investing is aligning with their values before it became a thing. It really, and I think, these louder calls to, as you mentioned, like ethical investments and social impact investments have become a thing because of women leading that charge. So I'm really glad you mentioned it. And the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about the research was that women don't tend to be the people who are like, yes, let me give you money so you can put my name on a building, right? And I thought about, where we are, where the world is at right now. And I won't mention person by name. I'm just going to say that we are on the verge of making one individual a trillionaire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Know anything about that?
I do.
Yes. So I had this thought in my head. What if we had a woman become a trillionaire? Like, what on earth would she do with that money to help the world versus, a name on a building? What could the first female trillionaire do? And I think what's really cool about what the rise in the wealth of women suggests is we'll have lots of women that will inherit trillions. So we won't become trillionaires. So together, all of us can do some really amazing things, right? So I'm just grateful that you talk about these different ways that women can give and the shift that they have to make to understand how powerful it is when they align their values with their money and they have a plan for what they want to do with their money, way beyond the time that they're actually on Earth. So now let's get tactical. And let's say we have a listener that's hearing this and thinking, okay, I'm ready. I may not be a trillionaire myself, but I could be an army of people who are, women who are all inheriting trillions. So I'm ready. I want to have my money to reflect what I value. What should I do first? If you were building a roadmap for high earning women, what steps would that be? What would it
Yeah, absolutely. And I could talk about our own family journey a little bit. But my mother-in-law, first thing she did was go and talk to community foundations, for instance, and then get some really good advice about how to start a process. And then she co-founded the community foundation in her own community in order to start a women's changemaker fund.
So roll that tape back. So she's like, let me figure out, okay, I'm going to be one of these badass women who, write big checks, and I want to get some advice from some community foundation to figure out what to do with my money. And then she became one herself. Is this what you're saying?
She co-founded, yes, with a group of people in her community, a community foundation, and then she started her own fund. And she was an entrepreneur. She was always philanthropic. She had a line, in her budget every year towards philanthropy. She gave her staff the time to volunteer for the organizations they cared about, and they were paid to do it, and they had allotments to give to those organizations. So she is most well known in her community for her generosity. It was also a business strategy that was really, really effective. We can do these things together. We can walk these roads together in a really interesting and ethical way. And so, yes, some really great advice can come from your local community foundations, but also there is this role of both wealth advisors with philanthropy experience and philanthropic advisors. Sometimes they're the same person,
right?
Sometimes, and they're not, and they work together. Right. To help you build a plan, but to really understand what you care about most and where you want to make that impact the most. They have lots of research and information for you, but also to help you walk through. And you do want to have a conversation with your family as well, because sometimes those are going to be difficult conversations to have. But it's important that these people, these different types of advisors, can support that conversation.
It absolutely is a team effort when it comes to, giving to your family and how you plan to give. Because I think we always talk about in our practice the importance of family meetings, just so your family knows what you're planning on anyway after you're gone, or even just your plan while you're alive, so that they have a sense of the intentions you've set, so that they can carry them on when you're gone as well. And you can create that spirit of generosity. And it's so funny. Of course, your mom would be the person who would get advice and then be the person giving advice and creating this, amazing collaborative scenario. I think it's so important that you mention that it could be a strategy, because imagine, you get all these stakeholders together as a business owner and you say, these are organizations I care about. And now you're working with those organizations and they get to know you. What's a wonderful way to brand your business and for people to know who you are. So it doesn't, as you said, it can really be an intentional thing that helps your business as well, right?
And we all, our family, the women in our family, all volunteer, maybe obsessively. We sit on boards, we get to know different organizations. We've worked on, my mother-in-law has worked on capital campaigns. My wife runs a camp for queer and trans youth, and as well as is a professor. And the minute I finished that PhD, I joined a nonprofit housing board, and I joined an art gallery board immediately, because
of course you did, with all your free time. I was
like, okay, that's over. Those 4 years are over, and here I go. And
right.
The motivation is because those spaces are such incredible spaces for innovation and change and I can learn from those organizations. I don't know how nonprofit housing works, but I want to know. The easiest way for me to figure that out, if I don't want to do another degree, is to join the board, because
It,
I'll understand those finances, I'll understand the administration and operations, and I'll learn how to govern that type of organization.
So yeah, so you get all these amazing, you get to learn new skills. And again, higher earning community, are you listening to this? Because it's also an opportunity for people to get to know you, get to know your company. You get to build influence, and you're building influence and passion about things you care about. And people will actually reward that passion. That's what I've seen in my own business in working with organizations I care about. Is often a number of those individuals end up working with me or referring me business just because they know that I'm not there for any other reason than you to learn or to give back.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
don't underestimate the power of just showing up. And as you mentioned so many times already, that I think it's worth mentioning again, just showing up and leading and giving with that intention to create an impact. And so now I'm going to talk about those individuals I even see in my office who are giving, and it's like the end of the year and they might need a tax receipt, right? And they're like, okay, let me give to, something quickly. Maybe I don't think about it that much because I need a tax receipt. And so I consider that kind of accidental giving, because I also feel that women also might just give because somebody asked them to. It's like those Girl Guides showing up at your house. Who can say no to them, especially after you open your door? Right? So anyway, sometimes you're just giving and you're being generous. And I really believe that generosity without a strategy is just that. It's just generosity. And impact, again, comes from intention. So what are some of the common mistakes you see women making when it comes to giving, other than like quick tax receipt, not knowing anything about the charity?
The women that I've talked to so far
Mhm.
understand that when they give a gift, it is out of their control. And, yes, they do want to see impact, but they do understand that. So the greatest way to ensure that you have a good understanding is to, sit down like we do in so many other ways in our life, and build a little strategy, understand what our values are, ask our friends, ask other community members. We never talk about wealth. But I've started to have a lot of conversations about wealth, and we're hungry for it. We're hungry for figuring this out, how we can do our best to give and to take care of our families, and have what we need as well. There's no shame in this. In fact, it can be very liberating. And in relationship with organizations, as we build those relationships, we're going to get so much back for ourselves that strategy is worth building. Having said that, there are organizations that, are well established, and that we can, nationally, that globally, even in communities that are well established. Absolutely. And every organization has to have transparency. You can look up their tax returns. You can meet with those organizations. But, when we're giving, at the other side of that, they're going to manage that. And there needs to be trust. And so trust-based philanthropy is becoming larger and larger, being in relationship, growing that relationship with an organization. I was talking to a person today who is a social innovator and investor. She's starting social enterprises that are charitable nonprofits, and she's connecting them together and connecting people into those. Or if they have an idea, she connects them into this network now. And she is changing the face of her city.
Wow.
She is meeting needs in a network, a charitable network that is very grassroots. With planning, we can make huge impact, cultural impact, faith-based impact, for the communities that we identify with or that we know have incredible need. So this year, This year, if you're looking for that last minute gift, go with your heart, go with your values. Next year, try to start thinking about a strategy. Often advisors say, local, regional, national, and maybe international if you're interested. But there's four things that you can do
Yes,
to make an
local, regional,
impact over
and national.
generations.
I love those actually, and I when you were saying that, I was thinking of a few um, women's circles. I don't know if you've heard of this as well, Lisa, which
Yeah.
is one of them I've heard of is Women Who Care. And Women Who Care is one of those organizations. A whole bunch of women get together and they see, as you just mentioned, they see a need in their area. Everybody collects. They decide every year where they want that intentional gift to go to. So they all
Yeah.
raise money together. They also put money together, and then they say, "This is what we're going to support this year."
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, maybe it's the food bank, whatever it can, whatever you want it to be, but that local, regional, national, and potentially international are great ways to think about, well, what's happening in your community that you might want to make an impact on, and then go from there. I also thought about, I used to be on the committee for Gilda's Club, and I remember us raising the money to buy the building to house the Gilda's Club cancer survivors, and the furniture and all the individuals, including another organization of women who got together to raise money so we could do that. So, there is so many different ways that women can get involved. And I know for sure you've probably collected so many stories of women who've transformed their relationship with wealth and giving. And I'd love for you to share maybe one or two of those as well.
Yeah, I think that, in terms of giving circles, they're quite popular in the US.
Mhm.
And I think they're very, very interesting ways. Like we have 100 women giving
That's right.
circles and women moving millions. Those are really interesting. And, you're there and you've got an organization you want to support in mind, and you're saying to the others, okay, let's vote for mine. So some of the feedback has been not all philanthropists are interested in the pitch. They want to, that feels like a lot of pressure.
Mm.
But collective giving can make a difference. And there are other mechanisms to do that through DAFs, through community foundations. There's other ways to do that as well. And I think that for many, especially older women who are inheriting, there is some question about when you receive that money and the health of your spousal relationship if you're in a spousal relationship.
Right.
So also I think that there's such value in having a really great advice and advisors to support you in when you're inheriting or when you're building wealth, how to manage it and protect yourself with that wealth. I think that that's important. We have very, I'm on my second marriage here.
Right.
we
Right.
have very we have very honest conversations about that. And we are at two different stages. My wife has a lot of wonderful family support. Her mother worked extremely hard, and we have honest conversations about that money. And I think that's important, but it's not always easy. Having
No.
worked in the violence against women and gender-based violence world and social services, it is not easy. And I was just talking to a woman this morning who said, I've tucked it away, but my husband with dementia went to the bank yesterday, and the personal banker moved $15,000 out of our house
Oh.
account and invested it in mutual funds for him. And
Mm.
it's in his name, and he has cancer and dementia. And I said, oh, I'd be calling that bank right now. Who let that happen, without your permission, without your consent,
Yeah.
And so women are still experiencing, you know, challenges around money that prevent us from giving. If I was going to give money first, I will always give it to my children first. And so
Right.
those conversations are also important to ensure that our children are well taken care of in ways that meet our values, and make sure that they understand and are grateful for that support. Um, but also, we also have to put that into our philanthropy plan.
That's kind of all of the infrastructure. When you were saying that, I was thinking about all of the infrastructure you need to give well.
Mhm.
And the infrastructure is kind of going back to what you were saying, taking a team approach with your giving plan, and how you're going to give with impact, and thinking about what you care about, but also how are you structured so that you can give in a way that makes the most sense, even from a tax effective perspective, and also from a family a family wealth transfer plan that's effective based on what's going on in your family. And you put it quite rightly, Lisa. It's hard conversations to have because you're talking about so many different things. In this case, you're talking about giving to things you care about, but family and who gets what, and how do people feel about that. It's not easy to always navigate on your own, but the conversations are important. And one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking about you want your money to give to your children, when it comes to inheritance, it's always about keeping it separate from family property. So that's not the money you necessarily want to put in a joint account, because it might mean it may not go where you want the money to go, and it might not impact, and I mean family and even the organizations that you care about, if it's not kept separately. So that on its own is just infrastructure. But building that team is so important, like having that accountant, that planner, that, as you were talking about, community advisor or foundation advisor that can give you ideas on how you can, use your gift for good, for the things you care about. It is about having that team so that you can give up from a place of not feeling guilt or feeling pressure, or being bogged down because of maybe a power dynamic in your relationship. But so decide that these things are important to you and this is something you want to do, and then decide who are you going to get to help you with it, so you can, as you said, have those conversations that might be hard to have on your own.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want to actually end with saying, legacy is such a charged word for women, because for so long, legacy didn't even belong to us. As you were saying, we didn't even get a chance to inherit until 50 years ago, and that's just for some of us. So that being said, what does legacy mean to you, Lisa?
I think that legacy, my wife said to me the other day, hope isn't just optimism, it's action. And so I think that there are a lot of communities that experience oppression and marginalization. And the ways in which they think about community and caring for community is philanthropic. And that is the action that I want to take. I want to ensure the survival of this beautiful humanity by making sure that those who are experiencing inequity can rise, because we know that that will create sustainability for our world. Secondly, I think our kids need to understand what philanthropy is. And philanthropy isn't just wealth transfer. It is the use of private private resources for public good in the public sector, through our time, through our talents and our skills and our treasure. So at some times in my life, I can give my time, and wow, do I give my time.
Yes,
And
yes.
I
It
can
would make you think
advise.
you have lots of it, and I know you don't. But anyway,
Yes. Advise, consult, support, mentor. Amazing. That is philanthropy. And women have done that forever. We have cared for each other in sewing circles, in moving each other through, through to safety, in the different ways we've protected each other's rights. And we need to continue to do that. But my kids need to understand that and why. And building a culture of giving and volunteerism, not necessarily the treasure at the early stages, but in participating in community is so important. We're all on our devices.
Yeah.
I get my notifications each day at how long I've been on my device. And the more we engage with community and build relationship, the healthier our communities are for those kiddos, because I want my grandkids down the road, and I want those generations moving forward, as I've been taught by Indigenous knowledge keepers and elders. And, as the 7 generations back have tried to take care of us and to get us to this place, to this point. So I think legacy is not only something that you put in your will, which is important. And, we've thought of that as a couple, but also thinking about our community and what we hope for the communities that are important for us.
Yeah, no, amazing. And it's just legacy also lives in the hearts and the minds of the people you leave behind. So it isn't just in the will. And that, as you mentioned, it could very well be your time and your energy, and mentorship is one of the ways you can do that, or just being in community, as you mentioned, and building relationships there, and people remembering some of the things that you did to make a difference in those spaces. So beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. What's next for you and the Women in Philanthropy Initiative?
Excellent. So we right now are interviewing 75 women as philanthropists across the country. That's year 1 of our research. Year 2 will be for people who work in philanthropy, women who work in philanthropy. And then year 3 will be the people who support women in philanthropy. So that includes women as wealth advisors, philanthropy advisors, venture capitalists, social investors. We're trying to build a full story to support women who are on a journey of philanthropy or restarting their journey of philanthropy. So we hope to create a nationwide conversation, both through academic research, which is needed. There's very little about Canadian women in philanthropy in the academic sphere, but also for the public sector. So within the third sector, the charitable nonprofits themselves, and for all of those who support them. We want to help women understand this better, and we want to work with amazing people to help us get that information out there for them. Because again, women's movements can make change, and this is one movement I want to be a part of. I'm getting on that bus, and I encourage everyone to get on with me, have the conversations. And if you would like to speak to me more, you can email me at WIP for Women in Philanthropy, WIP@carleton.ca.
Amazing. I was going to say, thank you so much for this beautiful, empowering conversation. Your work actually is not only just shining a light on women's giving, it's really reshaping the future of women's wealth, leadership, and legacy in Canada. So thank you so much. I love the fact that you're researching women that are making an impact. I like to say on our show, women who are writing big checks, not only for themselves, but to the communities they care about. So I can't wait to read about these women who are writing big checks and making an impact in their communities. So I'm looking forward to getting a copy before they hit the shelves of stores. So please don't forget me, Lisa. And if to our listeners, if you're feeling call to align your wealth with your values, follow that call, right? We like talking about women writing big checks, but impact doesn't just end with a check. It starts with clarity, intention, and the courage to lead. And, please get in touch with Lisa. And if you loved today's episode, please follow us, rate and share the High Earning Women podcast. And it really helps us to bring more game-changing conversations like this to you each week. And anyway, that's it for today's episode of the High Earning Women podcast. And I'd love for us to stay connected. So please follow our firm's LinkedIn page at Team Jackie Porter, because that's where we share insights, resources, and updates that you won't want to miss. And if you'd like to keep listening to more episodes of the High Earning Women podcast, please check us out on all of the places where you get the podcasts, including Spotify, including Apple Podcasts. We'd love to have you check out more episodes there. Thank you again for listening to the High Earning Woman podcast. And remember, earn your wealth. You deserve to own your wealth. You earn your wealth, own your wealth by rising up, using your money to rise up and building wealth with intention. So until next time, thanks again for tuning in, everyone. See you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Lisa.
Feeling G fierce and octane, boss is her title. Well,